My name is Elias Thorne. Former 75th Ranger Regiment, 2 tours in the sandbox. Specialized in high-risk asset protection. If you're listening to this, you've found the black box in the wreckage on Route 95. Don't bother looking for my name in the DoD databases. In Sector S-4, Area 51, names are just data, and data can be deleted. I spent 212 days down there, 7 months of absolute silence. I went in looking for the truth about what the government was hiding under the Nevada sand. Now that I know, I'd give anything to reach into my skull and scrub my brain clean. It started with the smell. S-4 smells like ozone and burnt paper. Always. You take a pressurized elevator down for 3 minutes. That's level 9. There are no windows, no natural light, just dim LED panels that never cast a shadow. You don't realize how much you miss shadows until they're gone. The first thing they gave me wasn't a weapon. It was a gray spray can and a 40-page manual. Rule number 1. Any reflective surface must be painted matte within 5 minutes of discovery. I asked the instructor why. He didn't answer. He just looked at me. His eyes were pale, too pale. He didn't blink once during our entire conversation. "Thorne," he said. His voice was flat, like a machine trying to sound human. "You're here because your file says, capable of maintaining emotional 0. We need that 0. We need your emptiness." I didn't realize then that it wasn't a compliment. It was a technical spec. They weren't looking for a soldier. They were looking for a biological container. My shift was 12 hours, post 7, guarding a reinforced block called Subject 1. The walls were polycarbonate with a frosted coating. Inside was the fog. That's not a code name. It was a literal gray mist that behaved like a living thing. It didn't fill the room evenly. It always gathered exactly where you were standing on the other side of the glass. The first time I approached the chamber, the fog inside started to swirl, slowly, like a vortex. Within a minute, it took a shape. A man, tall, gaunt, with long, spindly fingers. He pressed a palm against the glass from the inside. He had no face, just the suggestion of eye sockets. The manual was clear. Observe only the pressure gauges. Forbidden to lock eyes with the center mass of the subject for more than 3 seconds. I was a pro. I counted in my head. 1, 2, 3. And I'd flick my eyes to the manometer. But in the 4th week, the world glitched. At 1400, Sergeant Miller was supposed to relieve me. At 1415, he was gone. No struggle, no alarm. When I came back from the latrine, a different man was standing at post 7. Same height, same uniform, but it wasn't Miller. I walked up to him. "Where's Miller?" He looked at me with those same pale eyes. "Who is Miller?" I went to the terminal. I typed his name into the personnel log. No results found. I typed in his service ID. I knew it by heart. Service ID available for registration. In S-4, people don't die. They just cease to have ever existed. And the most terrifying part? Within 10 minutes, I realized I couldn't quite remember what Miller's face looked like. His features were blurring in my mind, turning into that same gray mist. I started keeping a log, a small notebook hidden in the lining of my plate carrier. I wrote down everything: shift times, temperatures, the names of the vanished. By the end of the second month, there were 11 names on that list. That was when I broke the 3-second rule. It wasn't curiosity. It was a system failure. The pressure sensor on subject 1 started redlining. I had to check the seal on the glass. I leaned in close. The fog was waiting. It instantly took a shape. My shape. Elias Thorne. Same Ranger tab, same scar on the jawline. It looked at me with my own eyes. I froze. 1, 2, 3. I didn't look away. On the 4th second, the hum of the ventilation vanished. The world went into a vacuum of absolute silence. My internal monologue, that constant narrator in your head that says, "This is bad, get out," it just died. It was the most beautiful feeling of my life. Like a jagged bullet had been pulled out of an old wound. Total, infinite relief. No thoughts, no fear, just me and the fog. A sharp jolt brought me back. My automated AED triggered a medical override because my heart rate had dropped to 12 beats per minute. My heart had almost stopped. I fell to my knees, gasping. The fog behind the glass slowly settled back into a formless gray. I looked at my hands. They were shaking. And that's when I realized why they recruited from Spec Ops. Our brains, trained to suppress stress, we latch onto that silence like a drug. A week later, I found the first physical evidence. In the mess hall, I sat across from Dr. Sterling. He was eating his mash with a nylon spoon. I accidentally dropped my Zippo, a heavy brass lighter. It clattered against the concrete. Sterling didn't flinch, but the fog in his eyes, I swear to God, I saw a gray wisp drift behind his pupils. He looked at the lighter, then at me. "Metal is prohibited, Elias," he said. He kept staring at me. 5 seconds. 10. He didn't blink. "Old man," he repeated my words. "Biological progenitor. Redundant noise." He stood up and walked away, leaving his tray. He'd left his clearance badge. I snatched it up. On the back, there was a tiny, smuggled piece of foil. Sterling had been using it as a makeshift mirror to check his eyes. I caught my reflection in that foil. My stomach turned into ice. In the reflection, I saw Sterling walking away, but behind him, where his shadow should have been, there was a thin, barely visible trail of gray smoke. It was drifting into the ceiling vent. Then I looked at my own eyes. They were lighter, almost transparent. And the worst part? I realized I couldn't remember what color they used to be. Hazel? Blue? Brown? I reached into my vest for my logbook. The book was gone. In its place, inside the lining, was nothing but fine, gray dust, as if the paper had been ground down to the molecular level. I stood in that mess hall, and the sweet, killing silence started to rise in my head again. I realized they weren't just deleting files. They were digesting me. I haven't dreamed in 40 days. Think about that. When you sleep in S-4, you don't see faces or places or even nightmares. You close your eyes and there's gray static, like a television tuned to a dead channel. I woke up on day 62 and realized I couldn't remember the taste of coffee. I was drinking it, hot, black, bitter, but my brain was reporting nothing, just wet heat. That's how the digestion works. It doesn't eat your flesh, it eats your perception. It starts with the things you don't need for basic survival. Dreams first, then taste, then then the faces of the people you love. I looked at the photo of my daughter I kept in my locker. I knew it was her. I could see the red dress, the birthday cake, but there was no spark, no punch in the gut. To my brain, she was just an arrangement of pixels, a redundant biological file. Around week 10, they moved me to the acoustic lab on level 11. This is where it gets worse. My job was to sit in a soundproof booth and listen to white noise through high-end headphones for 6 hours a shift. They told us it was to recalibrate our hearing after being near the fog chambers. But I'm a ranger. I'm trained to find patterns in the chaos. By the 3rd hour, the white noise started to change. It wasn't just static anymore. There were pulses, rhythms. It sounded like 1,000 voices whispering at once, just below the threshold of comprehension. It was a broadcast. I started to sync my breathing to the pulses. In, out. In, out. And then the voice in my head, the one I thought was dead, spoke up for one last second. It didn't use words, it used a feeling. Terror. I ripped the headphones off. My ears were bleeding. Not a lot, just a thin, watery pink fluid. I looked at the oscilloscope on the desk. The frequency wasn't a flat line. It was shaped like a double helix. They weren't testing our hearing. They were programming the silence. They were teaching the fog how to bypass our auditory nerves and write directly onto our motor cortex. That's when I saw the processing logs on the technician's desk. I wasn't supposed to see them, but the tech, a guy named Miller, or maybe a new Miller, had walked away to stare at a blank wall for his scheduled reset. The log didn't say staffing report. It said container ripeness. I found my name. Elias Thorne, grade Alpha, ripeness 82%. Next to my name was a note. Optimal emotional suppression. Subject is nearing 0 state. Transfer to Sector 10 scheduled for day 220. Ripeness. Like I was a piece of fruit. I looked at the other names. Sterling, Miller. They were all at 95% or higher. Full stabilization imminent. I realized then that S-4 wasn't a research facility. It was a farm. We weren't the guards. We were the crop. They were using our military training, our ability to be a stone, to shut it down, to cure the fog's only weakness. See, the fog is chaos. It needs a structure to hold it. And a soldier's mind is the most disciplined structure on Earth. Once we hit 0, the fog moves in, uses our training to stay stable, and then it has a body that knows how to shoot, how to lead, and how to blend in. But I still didn't know what Sector 10 was. I found out during the incident at the vent. I was heading back to the barracks when I heard a sound. A wet, tearing sound coming from the main ventilation shaft. I looked up. A maintenance worker was stuck halfway in the grate. He wasn't struggling. He was melting. His legs were still human, camo pants, those heavy boots with the copper plates, but his upper torso was turning into that gray smoke. He was being sucked into the vent like water down a drain. But he wasn't dying. He was communicating. As he dissolved, he looked at me. He didn't have a mouth anymore, but I heard him in my skull. The signal. It's going live. Sector 10 is the antenna. The whole world is the chamber. I backed away. My copper-soled boots started to hum, a low-frequency vibration that rattled my teeth. I looked at my reflection in a polished brass fire extinguisher, the only thing they'd missed. My eyes were gone, They were just two flat silver mirrors. And in the reflection, I didn't see the hallway. I saw a city. My home city. And every person walking the street had a thin trail of gray smoke rising from their neck, leading up into the sky. I wasn't looking at a reflection. I was looking at the future. I stole a master key card from the melted man's belt. It was cold, so cold it burned my skin. I have 10 days before my ripeness hits 100%. 10 days before Elias Thorne becomes a permanent broadcast tower for the fog. I'm going to Sector 10, not to guard it, not to see it. I'm going to burn it down, even if I have to use my own blood as the accelerant. If you stop dreaming, if the coffee tastes like nothing, don't look at the sky. Day 215. The air in S-4 became thick, not with smoke, but with pressure. You know that feeling before a massive lightning strike, when the hair on your arm stands up and the world feels like it's made of glass? That was every second of that week. I was stationed at the entrance to the medical wing. My ripeness was at 92%. I could feel the silence in my head growing, like a scab over a wound. I had to struggle to remember my own middle name. It's James. At least, I think it's James. Then came Miller. Not the first Miller, not the second. This was Miller 4. He was a tech, grade beta. He walked past my post, and for the first time in months, I saw a human expression on a stable face. It wasn't a smile. It was terror. Pure, unadulterated, shaking in the boots terror. He leaned in close, pretending to check my badge. "Thorne, look at my hand." He was clutching something wrapped in a bloody rag. He'd cut himself to hide what was inside. He opened his palm just an inch. It was a shard. A 3-inch piece of a real glass mirror. Silver-backed. Pure. "I found it in the old maintenance locker," Miller whispered. "They missed a spot. Thorne, I looked at myself. We aren't here anymore." Before I could grab him, he ran. He didn't run for the exit. He ran straight for the Subject 1 containment chamber. I chased him. My copper soles were screaming against the floor. I tackled him right in front of the glass where the fog was waiting. But Miller was faster. He held the shard up. Not to the fog, to his own face. The scream that came out of him, it wasn't human. It was the sound of 1,000 radio stations all shrieking at once. I looked at him, through the reflection of that shard. In the real world, Miller looked fine, but in the mirror? In the mirror, Miller's skin was transparent, like wet tissue paper. And underneath his ribs, winding around his spine like a nest of snakes, was the fog. It wasn't mist anymore. It was a physical parasite. Gray, pulsing veins of smoke that had replaced his nervous system. I saw it twitch. I saw it realize it had been seen. The moment Miller saw what he really was, the stabilization snapped. The internal dialogue came back with the force of a freight train. He realized he was being piloted. He started clawing at his own chest, trying to rip the smoke out of his lungs. "Get it out!" he screamed. But the fog responded. The gray suits, the special response team, they didn't walk in, they flowed in. They didn't use guns, they just touched him. Where their fingers met Miller's skin, his body just dissolved. No blood, just gray ash. Within 10 seconds, Miller 4 was gone. Not dead, uninstalled. I stood there, frozen. One of the SRT guards turned to me. He didn't have a face, just a smooth, matte gray visor, but I heard him in my skull. "Candidate Thorne, your cortisol levels are spiking. This is noise. Noise is inefficient. You are scheduled for recalibration in Sector 10, immediately." They didn't arrest me. They thought I was already too ripe to resist. They pointed toward the level 12 elevator, the one that leads to the antenna. But as they led me away, I kicked the bloody rag Miller had dropped. The shard was still there. I palmed it. I hid it in my glove. On the way to level 12, the elevator malfunctioned. Or maybe I made it malfunction. I hit the emergency override and forced the doors open at level 10, the archive. I had 3 minutes before the SRT recalculated my position. I ran to the main console. I didn't look for secrets. I looked for me. I found the file, Project Harvest Global Deployment. I wasn't just a candidate. Thorne, Elias. Status, Prime Host. Subject Thorne possesses a rare neural architecture. His military training has created a hardened void. Once 100% ripeness is achieved, Thorne will be the master signal. Through him, the Sector 10 antenna will broadcast the zero state to every mobile device within a 3,000-mile radius. I'm not just a soldier anymore. I'm a bomb. They aren't going to replace us one by one. They're going to use me to flip the switch for the whole country. One broadcast, one zero-state signal. And everyone who looks at their phone or their TV or their laptop will lose their eye in 3 seconds. I looked at the shard in my hand. My reflection was starting to blur. My own face in the mirror was looking back at me with a smile I didn't command. "Elias," my reflection whispered, without me moving my lips. "Stop making noise. It's so much better when it's quiet." I smashed the shard into the console. I'm on level 10. The SRT is 5 floors below me. The antenna is 1 floor above. My heart is beating at 110. My ripeness is dropping. The fog hates the noise of my heart. I have 1 magazine, a stolen master key, and a mind that is starting to remember what it's like to be angry. If you see the signal, if the zero state hits your screen, you have to find a mirror. Don't look at the screen. Look at yourself. Remind your brain that you still exist. Because if you don't, I'm coming for you. Level 12. The air up here doesn't just smell like ozone anymore. It smells like a thunderstorm inside a hospital. Bitter, metallic, cold enough to crack your teeth. I reached the antenna chamber. I expected a tower, a satellite dish, something military. But it wasn't a machine. Not really. It was a lens. A massive concave disc of polished obsidian, 20 feet across, suspended in the center of a magnetic field. And behind it was a massive containment unit filled with the fog. Pure, concentrated gray madness. The lens wasn't meant to send radio waves. It was meant to focus the fog's stare, to amplify that 3-second look and project it through every fiber optic cable, every satellite link, every screen on the planet. 1 flash. That's all it would take. 1 second where every phone on Earth displays that gray vortex. 3 seconds later, billions of zero states. Billions of empty containers ready for the harvest. I heard them behind me, the SRT. They weren't running. They didn't have to. "Elias, you are fighting a fire with a cup of water. Look at the lens. Look at your destiny." I didn't look. I kept my eyes on the floor, on the matte gray concrete. I reached into my glove and pulled out the mirror shard. It was covered in Miller's dried blood. I'm not a container, I whispered. I'm a ranger, and I've got a direct order to terminate this broadcast. I didn't shoot the lens. Bulletproof glass wouldn't care. I shot the magnetic stabilizers, the things holding the fog in place. The room exploded, not in fire, but in pressure. The fog didn't just leak out, it screamed. It flooded the chamber like a tidal wave. I felt it hitting my skin. It felt like 1,000 needles made of ice. I held the mirror shard up in front of my face like a shield. I watched my reflection. I watched Elias Thorne's face. I repeated my daughter's name, over and over. Lily. 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 I forced my brain to make noise. I sang every dirty cadence I'd learned in jump school. I screamed my service number. I did anything to keep the silence from settling in. I don't remember the escape. I remember the feeling of the technical collection tunnels, the smell of raw sewage, the sound of my own boots. The copper plates were glowing red from the friction of the lens's collapse. I came out somewhere near Groom Lake. The sky was purple. The stars looked like holes poked in a black curtain. I stole a truck from a maintenance shed and drove. I didn't stop until I hit this motel. Which brings us here, to this room, this recorder. I've been sitting here for 3 hours, the coffee on the nightstand. It tastes like ash. I can't remember what Lily's voice sounds like. I know she has a voice, but I can't hear it in my head anymore. My ripeness didn't stop when I blew the lab. It was already too late. The fog is inside. It's writing its code onto my spine as I speak. There's a mirror in this room, above the dresser. I've been avoiding it, but I have to know. I have to know if it's still me talking, or if I'm just the tape recorder for something else. I'm standing in front of it now. My eyes, they aren't transparent anymore. They're silver, like polished chrome. And behind me, in the reflection, the smoke. It's not a trail anymore. It's a shroud. It's wrapping around my throat, moving into my mouth. The broadcast didn't need the antenna, Elias. It just needed a carrier. I'm the signal! I just smashed the mirror, but I saw it before the glass hit the floor. The fog isn't just in S-4. It's in the electricity. It's in the Wi-Fi. It's in the device you're using to listen to this confession. Why do you think I'm telling you all this? Why do you think I'm being so descriptive? I've been talking for an hour. You've been listening. You've been visualizing every word, every gray wisp, every pale eye. You've been looking into the fog for 60 minutes. Check your timer. Has it been 4 seconds? Is your internal monologue still there? Or is it quiet? Check your timer. Has it been 4 seconds? Is your internal monologue still there? Or is it quiet? This was tape 1 from the Project Harvest leak archive. Tape 2 is where things get visible. It contains the raw, unedited footage from Sector 10, the lens itself. If you want to see exactly what is being broadcasted through your screen right now, you need to be ready. Subscribe to this channel and stay alert for the next transmission. I'll be dropping the visual evidence soon. Just promise me one thing. When the video starts, don't look into the center of the screen.